So we're going to start with a couple introductions. My name is Alyssa Dyer. I work with the MSL program as the director of curriculum. So I work really closely with all of our faculty and with our director, Leslie, who's here today, on sort of developing the classes and planning out what we offer in the program. Leslie?
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Leslie Oster. I direct the MSL program. Very happy to have you guys with us tonight. Our goal tonight is to talk about the Master of Science in Law program, which we do once a month. We have an info session where we talk all about this program. But once a year, we have an info session that is focused on health and medicine because we get a lot of interest from folks in this area. And we also get a lot of confusion from folks in this area who say like, oh, I'm doing medical. What do I need to know about law? And so we try to bring together some of our students and alums to convey the value of the Master of Science in Law program for health and medical professionals. I'm very excited to have the people that we do tonight, alums of the program, and a couple current students as well. And while Alyssa is highlighting them on the screen, I like to ask each person to introduce yourself and tell a little bit about your educational background and where the MSL fit into that. So Lulu, we're going to start with you.
Hi, my name is Lulu Algalini. I am a second-year resident at Wellstar Kenneth Stone Hospital in Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm an emergency medicine resident. I graduated in 2018. I originally did University of Cincinnati as undergrad for neuroscience and pre-med. And I actually also got an email about the MSL program is how I found out. I toured it in the spring and met Leslie and met the dean, and it was amazing. And I fell in love with it. We'll get into kind of the specifics of why I chose it later, but that's pretty much it.
Thanks, Lulu. I do have to say, when we first started this program, we were very kind of general about STEM. Oh, we'll get some scientists, we'll get some engineers. And we knew that we would focus some on health, but we didn't expect to get so many doctors and people who were thinking about going to medical school or pursuing other forms of medical education. The first time we had a student do it, we went, this program is perfect for her. And she went on to UCLA med school, and now she's doing her residency. And so that, opened our eyes, and that caused us to sort of evolve the program to include more health and medical courses. So Lulu, if you're on when we do part of the curriculum, you'll see a lot has changed, and hopefully better.
Awesome.
Thanks. Kelly, let's go to you.
Hi, I'm Kelly Stecker. I'm an OBGYN. I'm a full-time clinically practicing OBGYN. And as you all can imagine, women's health has become quite the focus on policy lately. And so we could all kind of sense where the climate was going. And so I definitely wanted to have more of a legal background for that reason. I personally was a whistleblower in a healthcare case. And so that deeply impacted me and my career and the track that I wanted to be on. And I've met many physicians over the years that have had similar situations to what I've had, and think that more physicians really need to have a legal background to not only protect themselves, but for patient safety reasons, just so that we can make sure that we're doing the right thing, not only ethically, but legally.
Wonderful. Thank you, Kelly. Let's go to one of our current medical students. Alice, how about you? Let's hear a little introduction from you.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Alice. I'm currently a fourth-year medical student at UCSF and interviewing for emergency medicine residencies this month. My education background, I did a human biology and global health double major in college, and my interests were very spread. So I was doing some entrepreneurial things on the side. I was working with the industry relations manager at our hospital, looking at some more policy and patient advocacy issues. And I was also obviously interested in global health and human rights. So I was trying to figure out what to do. I knew I didn't want to go directly into medical school, and found the MSL program as such a perfect opportunity that covered all of these different interests that ultimately intersect at medicine and law. So I was really, really happy with my year. I was a full-time residential student.
Thanks, Alice. I should say, after that first student who went on to medical school, we started thinking about the program. And each one of our students has really helped us refine and define and evolve the program to make it appropriate for folks who are interested in medical education. While we're on that point, let's go to you, Sarah.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah. I'm a third-year medical student at Del Med at UT Austin, so I'm currently in Texas. I was a medical humanities major. I graduated from Baylor. And really, I had always said growing up, like if something happened and I couldn't be a doctor, I'd want to be a lawyer. So I still feel like you're advocating for people just in totally different ways. So really my fourth year of my undergraduate degree, I took a class just on our healthcare system and looking more into insurance. And I was honestly shocked and repulsed at our current state of our insurance system, especially being in Texas. In Texas, we did not expand Medicaid. And then after graduating, I got involved with Planned Parenthood, and I was thinking I want to take time off before medical school. I want to involve the legal system and get like a legal education, but not all the way go into law school. And thankfully, I was able to find the Master's of Science Law, which really just helped me explore that further. Really looking at how I can advocate, how I can learn more about the legal system, and then use that to integrate into the current healthcare system and the profession that I hope to have in the future.
That's great. We'll talk more about that too. Finally, we're going to go to one of our current students. I should have mentioned that Alice and Sarah and Lulu are all graduates of the program, and Kelly and Andrea come at it from a different angle. Andrea, please introduce yourself.
You can say older. It's okay. We won't be hurt. I'm Andrea Birnbaum. I am a professor of ophthalmology at Northwestern, as it says on the screen. I'm also, my main job is the director of oversight and compliance within the Office of Academic Affiliations. So for those of you who rotate at VAs and you get money for it, it goes through our office. But we're also provide oversight for all the policies and regulations, not the bad ones. We try to protect you from those. So obviously I have an interest in compliance, and that's how I landed in this program. I was looking for something when I took this job that would help me in my current position. So it wasn't something I was going to use necessarily in the future. It's kind of something I needed at the time, and I'll say that I use it every day. I learn a lot, and I apply it to my everyday life. So I guess we're going to talk more about that as you ask questions, but it really is, it can be used immediately in your life in many ways, as well as help you as you grow in your career.
Thanks for that. You guys are an amazing panel, and we're really grateful to have you all with us. I think you can learn from both sides, from people who came to the MSL program before doing their medical education, and from people who had very established careers and successful careers before coming to the MSL. I think both provide insight into the value of this program for doctors and nurses and other medical professionals. Before we get started asking our panelists some questions, I want to provide a little bit of background about the MSL program. This won't take a long time, but it'll help situate you, and then we will go straight into a panel discussion with questions, and you all that are here participating in this webinar should feel free to think of some questions you might want to ask these guys. Okay, so why the MSL? Like, who thinks of going to law school when you're interested in medicine? Except like those very few people who do JDMD, which is rare and it's quite a haul. A number of years ago, we were just looking at kind of like the direction of the world, the direction of the economy, and we were really focused on STEM professions and just how important they were becoming in the modern world. We were also looking at this idea that so many skills were siloed. You'd have like the law people over here and the medicine people over here and the engineers, doing product design over here and the business people over here. And it just seemed like things were so siloed that it was becoming an obstacle in the way of advancing an idea, a product, a policy. We started looking at this and thinking about what we could do to bring more STEM professionals into the law school for some legal background, not necessarily to be lawyers, of course, but just to sort of be able to understand what's going on in the legal world, policy, regulation, and how all those things impact different professions, particular, in our case, the STEM professions. So the dean of our law school at the time here talked about the de-siloing of traditional roles and looking for people who have a combination of skills. And that's a theme you'll see throughout, putting different skills together in the same person, as opposed to having different skills in multiple people and never them meeting. The head of our entrepreneurship center, Professor Esther Barron, talked about all these great ideas that she had seen fail. The ideas were good, but the entrepreneurs' understanding of what they needed to do to make those ideas a reality in the world was not so good. So she felt it was important to create a program that helped explain the landscape that entrepreneurs might be operating in, so that they wouldn't be they would be able to get through some of the legal regulatory barriers that exist. Two other thought leaders that we talked to when we were creating this program. One is a general counsel at Tempest Labs, who talked about the need for people, again, with a combination of skills, technical and non-technical. And again, now we're getting a direction, and most simply put, by the former dean of our engineering school, who was dean when we started this program. We're looking for people who see connections, people who want to look out and see, like, here's what happens when I do this. And I probably need to communicate with this person to make sure that this doesn't happen. So taking a more holistic view of opportunities, obstacles, policy issues that come up along the way. So we took all of this kind of idea of trying to create connections and combinations and created the MSL. So what are some of the main features of the MSL? Well, the next slide is going to show you some of those features. So one, it's an intersectional degree. I think I've explained why. It's not a JD. It has aspects of a JD. It's not an MBA. It has aspects of an MBA. It has aspects of a communications degree, a public health degree, lots of degrees. It is truly an intersectional, interdisciplinary degree. Other law schools have master's programs, but Northwestern's is the only one that really focuses on STEM professionals and has a bespoke curriculum that really emphasizes health and medicine. So it's a unique program, even in the world of legal master's degrees. The classes tend to be really practical. This is one way that the MSL differs from, say, a JD, which happens, usually tends to be a little more theoretical. This program is foundationally grounded on the theoretical topics, but we move very quickly into practical and real world implications and applications of the theoretical material. So it sets a different focus. We know our students are busy. Our full-time students finish in a year, and our part-time students are working while they're doing this program. And so we've tried to find the balance of practical with theoretical to make this program really useful to people in the real world. Curriculum is also very flexible. We have a lot of classes. Everybody puts the curriculum together in a different way. It allows people to explore the areas that they're interested in. And from the poll, I could see that a lot of you checked intellectual property, business, regulation, lots of different areas. Not very many people check privacy, but I guarantee you privacy is going to be actually something that's really important to you as medical professionals. But again, you can kind of put the curriculum together in the way that best suits your interests. We have an online format and a residential format. The residential format is full-time. Alice, Sarah, and Lulu did the residential format. We have an online program that's part-time that people do kind of while they're working full-time. Both Kelly and Andrea are in the online part-time program. And that, and we'll be able to ask them questions about how they manage to do everything that they managed to do, which is really impressive. But for those of you who clicked, I think it was 2/3 clicked on residential, that's what you were interested in. I'm guessing most of you are sort of maybe pre-medical education, and those of you who clicked online are maybe post-medical education, but not necessarily 100%. So we'll see how that goes. But just know that with these two formats, it's the exact same degree. The classes are the same or similar. The faculty are the same or similar. There are some differences in the student body. Again, the residential tends to be more pre-medical and the online tends to be more post-medical, but the students in both formats are quite interesting and wonderful, well-rounded, and bring a lot to the program. There's a lot of interaction between online and residential students as well. So that's, I think, a real feature of the program. Yeah. Okay. So now we're going to get to the panel part. And I'd like to start by asking Kelly and Andrea, neither one of you is at a loss for degrees. Y'all got, substantial educational background. Why would you come to a law school for another degree? That's a compound question. Sort of, why would you come to a law school? Why would you get another degree? What were you hoping to gain from getting this degree? And again, these are people who are well ensconced in their professional careers. We'll start with you, Andrea.
Sure. So yeah, I've been in school a long time, and it keeps you young, I think. So like I said, I guess I've always been interested in compliance, and I was managing the education program at the VA, the Jesse Brown VA. For those of you here in Chicago, I was in charge of the education program. So then when I moved up to central office to take this job in oversight and compliance, honestly, the first thing I was looking for is just some sort of professional development that I could do, because it's really important to anyone going into medicine. You don't just want to stop learning and stop growing. You want to look for things. And so I started kind of searching around, and this one really aligned well with my interests. I work at Northwestern, so there's of course a little bit of a tuition benefit as well, but that shouldn't stop you if you're interested. It's a very reputable school. I'll say, if you say you went to Pritzker Law School, I mean, that does carry some weight. So that was again not a make it or break it, but it was a nice perk that I can now have a sweatshirt that I have that has a law school that I like to wear around. But honestly, I think the most important part of this degree for my career is it just teaches you how others think, right? So I like Leslie said, I have a couple degrees. I got a PhD, so I understand how scientists think. I can read papers. I understand what it means when they, take it and shred it apart and start tearing out and criticizing every little bit of it. I know how physicians think because I've been practicing for many years. Lawyers are different. They think very differently than, neuroscientists and biologists, right? I mean, rules are there, but in a suggestive way for many lawyers, so they really look at regulations as a way to change things in the world, change aspects of an industry. Whereas in science, it just is what it is, right? I mean, it's black and white. It's more black and white. And so it really has helped me understand how they think, why their contracts are so long, why they include all this information. It's really a nice way to look at things. I have to tell you, the most hilarious class I took was the tax one, which has nothing to do with what I do, but just the perspective of how the regulations are created, what they're intended to do is really important to you if you want to be in a leadership position. And I'm sure Kelly can tell you that too. I mean, you have to know how regulations work, how policies are created, what the process is to get them through the concurrence process so that you can affect change in your career. So I think that's I'll stop and let Kelly talk.
Thanks, Kelly.
So I graduated med school in 2009, and I vowed I would never go back to school. I was like, this is done. I've got enough debt. The end. I'm sure my husband was, thrilled at the thought of never having another class to pay for other than our kids. And when you start your medical career, even in residency, you start seeing how a law degree or some legal background would be helpful, right? So you talk about contracts and the pitfalls and what to avoid. And we had like a half an hour residency overview of don't sign this if this, and then that was it. And so you just kind of see the pieces coming together where, maybe it would be helpful to know some of these things. And then, for me, as COVID started, I think seeing a lot of the physician concerns that were not being addressed by the healthcare systems, people getting fired for speaking out against some of these concerns, and not having the patient's backs as they should, not having that safety component at the home really was kind of a marker in my life of, okay, well, someone needs to be advocating more for physicians and nurses and the healthcare team. And how are we going to create change in the healthcare system that could potentially help patients and improve safety? And so then I started getting involved with, some of the Minnesota nurses unions and different things in our area to try to see how we could change policy that would affect our patients in a positive way. And so when you see all those things kind of lining up, you realize, okay, I wish I had more of a background so I could affect things in a positive way. And I'm hoping that I can advocate for other physicians, for nurses, and for our patients and improve safety and outcomes. I do think having this background is really beneficial in a leadership role or whatever role, right? Because when we're making policies in the hospitals, we have to justify spending money, even if it's the right thing for the patients, even if we're going to decrease maternal mortality, for example, with some of the obstetric changes that we make, we have to be able to prove that it's worthwhile to the people in the hierarchy in the systems. And so if we can show that we are decreasing liability by changing these things, then we have a higher likelihood of actually making progress on the issue.
That's great. Andrea, I see you raised your hand.
I just want to say one thing. Kelly, I've not met Kelly. You sound amazing. Not everyone does these things. It's the leaders in medicine who do it. So she's doing amazing things. Not all of the physicians are, but all of you who've introduced yourselves sound like you fit into that category. So I just want to throw it out there that it will help separate you from the rest of the pack, as Kelly has. I mean, the things that she's done sound amazing.
Right. And from my perspective, to hear you talk about the impact that you have, right? That's what resonates for me. Like, have more of an impact if you have this background and understanding. I did want to ask Andrea and Kelly in particular about your time management, because I know you're both like incredibly busy. How do you manage everything?
That's a great question. So I think you just have to really have a schedule. I mean, you have to have a schedule. I had my third child during residency because I was a little older, so I was already very busy. You just have to be organized, and I think most of you are. Make your lunch. Don't go out to eat for an hour. Study when you can. Be efficient. I don't know. I mean, I'm guessing most of you have good time management skills if you're thinking about going to medical school, but you just have to really stay focused, be efficient. I think Kelly and I are both in like procedure-based fields, so I think we tend to kind of be forced into that role because if the OR is running late, they'll tell us it's however many $1,000 per minute that we're wasting, blah blah blah. You know what I mean? So we kind of are forced to do that in our regular life as well. Kelly, I don't know what else. I don't know what else to add. You just have to make lists, be scheduled, and I'd say most importantly, because I was always stressed out, one step at a time. My mom would always tell me, it's never as bad as you think it is, Andrea, which because I was catastrophizer. It's never as bad as you think it is. Just take it one step at a time. Don't think about next week. Think about today. Get through today, and then tomorrow it'll work out.
All those things are great. But I have ADHD. Okay. So that's like one other little flavor I have going on. And I did not admit that to anyone until this year because now my daughter has ADHD and autism. So now I have to like own it and like cherish it and put it out there because I don't want my daughter thinking that it's bad. Right. So most physicians will not admit that they have anything because it is seen as like a weakness thing, right? So no one does that, which is so bad for mental health. But with what Andrea is saying, I think the biggest thing for someone with ADHD is having all the lists. I have like each day, I have the calendars plotted out. I have this organization I'm involved with. All the meetings are on there. Like you just have to figure out what works for your brain because it's going to be different for everybody. Right. And I think time management can be really easy for people, but if you have ADHD, time blindness is a thing. So, figuring out what works for you is critical. Otherwise, you're going to be behind. So for me personally, I always work like 2 weeks in advance. And that allows me to fill in the blanks later on. So when the class schedule comes out online, usually you can do, like a week or so in advance, and that's going to help you stay on track if you're struggling with accomplishing things in a timely manner and handing your tasks in. And for me, that decreases my anxiety, especially with call, because when I have calls, I don't know if I'm going to be up for 2 days straight. I don't know what's going to happen. And then circling back to do homework that maybe you're running late on is not what you want to be doing. So that's just my 2 cents.
Does anyone want to share the most important skills that doctors and other health professionals need to develop that are sort of missing? And what advice do you have for folks on this panel who are looking to hone those skills and where the MSL might fill that gap?
I can kind of start this one, or Andrea probably too, but there's a lot of times that I've said I wish I knew in my career, and some of it is around contracts, kind of like I mentioned earlier. We have no development. We're just basically like these little babies that are plopped into something. We don't even have education on how the healthcare system works when we're in medical school and residency. We're just like, okay, and do the surgery and do the deliveries, and then you leave and you don't even know what a prior auth is before you get into the real world of clinical medicine. And it just kind of smacks you in the face. And I think, the world of business formation is one of the classes we take. I would have loved to have a background in that, to know the different partnership agreements that were a potential, to negotiate contracts potentially better. I think kind of the overlap is endless in terms of, if you see a physician as a business owner as well, and I know that it's different in the landscape now because about 70% of us will be employed, right? And so slightly different now. But definitely there's a lot of business strategies that we're not given either, that I think is really important with this program. Besides that, being able to protect yourself from liability is also a critical thing. I'm an OBGYN. Most of us will be sued. Knock on wood, I haven't been, but that's the reality of life. And I think demystifying that and making it less scary is really critical, because when you look at the statistics, physicians have burnout, physicians have suicidal ideation. If they have a lawsuit, it really impacts their self-esteem, their self-worth, how they do their job. And, I deal with life and death situations. I deal with people bleeding. I deal with babies being all these things. And so I think having a background where you feel safe to practice, you're doing the evidence-based medicine, and it demystifies the other stuff is really critical just for a mental health component. So I think that having that early on in your career would really be very important and beneficial.
I can follow up. Kelly gave a really nice answer about just having a legal background and protecting yourself, which I wholeheartedly agree with. The other part that I probably focus more on is policy, just understanding policies. I don't think physicians are good at this. In fact, I think we're terrible at this. We just let things happen to us, right? So understanding that we actually have a voice and we can be involved in creating policies and regulations is really important. It'll help us advocate for ourselves. I just joined a physician advocacy council that's VA wide. And so, just knowing that, we can meet and we can help meet with the leadership of VA and advocate for our primary care physicians, especially because they're completely overwhelmed in VA, is important. And we're just bad at it. I mean, nursing does a much better job. I'm just going to throw it out there. Physicians, we just aren't as good. So I think anything you can do to really understand how policies work, understand how they impact what happens in your daily life, and on a national level is really important.
Lulu, you want to weigh in on that one?
Yeah, so I was going to say, I think it's extremely important to the advocacy, but for us that haven't had any really work-life experience, I think communication is huge. Just being able to communicate with a lawyer or someone in the regulatory industry at the hospital, how to read a contract, how to negotiate your salary, how to even negotiate with patients. I mean, me working in the ER, negotiations are part of my daily life. I have to constantly try and advocate for their own healthcare, and I negotiate with them. Just overall, how to also manage your finances. I took a lot of the finance classes at the MSL. They don't teach you any of that. They don't tell you when you get out of medical school or when you get out of residency and you have a high paycheck that you're not used to, how do you finance? What is financing? And if you want to start a business, how can you do that? And I think, to me, advocacy is super important, but I was missing a lot of that basic knowledge to just live a normal life and have maybe some side hustles or just kind of be involved in other parts of healthcare.
Alice, do your classmates come and look to you for legal advice?
I definitely started getting tons of questions after people knew I did the master's. And it's the same thing as what you do when someone asks you for medical advice and you're still a trainee. Like, whoa, this is not official advice by any means. But I would say I applied all of the things that the previous panelists have talked about. And something else I want to highlight is just the community aspect. Having been a part of the law school community and having been embedded with a lot of the law students in all of the different programs, it's made it a lot more approachable for me to create a similar interprofessional environment at whatever institution I go to next. So, for example, at UCSF, we have a law school right near us, UC Hastings in San Francisco, and there's like a law and medicine day they do every year. I was able to co-publish things with their attorney researchers in the realm of like medical legal partnerships, and then also have been able to host a bunch of innovation challenges that will invite both engineers, physicians, and then also law students. So I would say that part is a takeaway that I'm still using to this day.
But one thing that's been alluded to a lot so far has been the MSL curriculum, what people studied, what classes they took. So our director of curriculum, Alyssa Dyer, is going to take you a little bit through the curriculum right now.
But I'll talk us through a little bit about the MSL curriculum. So first, what you're seeing on screen here is sort of our program structure. So Leslie talked earlier about some of the goals of our program and giving students options to kind of create their own path through our program. We have a really robust curriculum. And one of the ways that we allow students a lot of choice is by setting up our program the way we do. So we have a really unique structure. We are on the semester system, fall and spring, but we divide the semesters in half. So we actually have 4 terms, fall 1, fall 2, spring 1, and spring 2. And then we have an additional summer term for our part-time students. These are 7-week long sessions, so they'll go by really fast, but it gives you the opportunity to take a lot of classes and a wide variety of classes. In addition to those regular 7 weeks terms, we have what we call power weeks at the end of every term. And the power weeks are opportunities to take compressed classes, sometimes sort of workshop style classes that give you a taste of maybe a niche subject that you're interested in. So during those power weeks, we have classes that range from, 3 days, 2 or 3 days usually, where you can kind of dive into subject that is sort of new, or you want to get your toes wet on something, or something, again, dive deep into something really niche. So those are opportunities to kind of expand your curriculum, the breadth of your curriculum. In addition, you'll see here we have an intersession that's similar, a compressed class that we offer between terms. So we have a lot of option here for how you want to set up your program. One thing I want to point out is for our online program, we do have a 2-credit residency requirement, which gives students the opportunity to come to campus and take some classes here. Those can be full regular term classes, but that's sort of the point of these power weeks, are to give all students a chance to come to campus, take some classes in a compressed setting. So online students can get the residency requirement by coming and taking a couple classes during a power week. We also offer weekend classes, which we'll show a little bit later what some of those look like. So there are a lot of opportunities for folks to come to campus and get that residency requirement. We have sort of, as I said, it's a really robust curriculum. We have a lot of classes, which I'll show in just a moment. And so we're always trying to think of ways that we can organize our curriculum to help explain it to students and help students make decisions. So one way we do that is by focusing on sort of these 4 main categories: business law and entrepreneurship, intellectual property, regulatory analysis, and skills building courses. You do not have to pick a track. Most students take classes across these areas. And frankly, a lot of our classes really could fall into multiple categories here as well. So I'll display our full curriculum later and sort of highlight which categories we put classes into so you can see kind of roughly where they fall. But you can pick and choose from any of these classes. And again, most of our classes are sort of interdisciplinary. We require 28 credits for the degree. Our classes range from half credits or 1 credit for some of those Power Week compressed classes I mentioned earlier, up to 2 credits. Many of our classes and most of our online classes are 1.5 credits for those 7-week classes. So what this means is you end up taking about 20 classes throughout your time in the program. So that's just a number to kind of keep in mind as you're looking through the curriculum and get a sense of how many of these classes you'll be able to take. We try to offer maximum flexibility in terms of what classes you're taking. So online students can come and take as many residential electives as they want. You can come to multiple Power Weeks. If you're local or pseudo-local, you could come and take 7-week classes residentially as well. And again, students really can customize their program. So you'll see our full list of classes and you can choose how you want to spend those 28 credits, apart from a few required classes, which we'll talk about next. I want to mention a few things about our online courses. So again, we have that full-time residential program, and then we have a part-time online program, and residential students can also take some online courses, and many do. Our online courses are really purposefully and thoughtfully designed. So we work closely with the instructors to think about how they translate their course into the online format. We have a professional video team that helps us record these videos. And the way they're organized is that they're sort of a combination of what we call synchronous and asynchronous content, meaning there's a lot of stuff that you'll do on your own each week. You'll watch the lecture videos, you'll engage in group projects and work with your peers. You'll engage on discussion boards. And then we have sync sessions over Zoom where you actually get to interact with the instructors, ask questions, do assignments, work with your peers, and be a part of sort of the MSL community. Kelly, if you're still on, we have an online student here. Would you mind talking a little bit about your experience in the online program and if the classes were sort of what you expected?
Yeah, I actually think they were probably even better than I expected. I don't think that I knew really what an online class was until I got into the program. I love that we have the background before the actual class. Just makes it a little bit more rich, if that makes sense. And then I really enjoy the Power Weeks. I'm going to try to do more of those going forward because it's a great chance to be with the cohort, and it's nice to actually have in-person classes as well. So I like that we have an opportunity to do a mix of the different classes if we want to.
Great, thanks. And just to give a sense of a little bit of what Kelly was mentioning there, when you go to these live class sessions is one thing that's a little bit different about a traditional classroom. Rather than coming to class, you're listening to a lecture and then you go home and work on assignments and do the reading, you really get to watch the lectures ahead of time and then come to class to do the discussion and dive into the material. So it really gives you the opportunity to go a little deeper with your peers and the instructors. And those live class sessions happen, it varies over the 7-week session how many of those synchronous sessions there are. But at most, they meet once a week. Many of our classes, they only meet 3 or 4 times over the 7-week term. So it offers a lot of flexibility for people who are working and have very busy schedules, as we know many of you do. Here is an overview of our required courses. So we have 8 required classes that everyone takes, regardless of which format you're in. Business formation and structure, business torts, which gets into the liability aspects that were mentioned earlier, contract law, really, really important across so many industries, but we heard just today how important in medicine, IP fundamentals, legal and regulatory process, which is a really foundational class about our legal system here in the United States, ethics, obviously very relevant here, or a research class and a communication class, which also came up. And so one thing I really loved just hearing our panelists talk today is that many of them mentioned the skills that were the most valuable. Some of those came from those required courses. And we hear all the time that some of our students' favorite classes are these required courses. So although they might not be specifically in your area of interest, I think these really, really do lay a good framework. Kelly, Sarah, Alice, any of you have a favorite required class that you took or one that you feel is the most valuable to you now? Yeah, Kelly, go ahead.
I think just on a really basic level, contract law is something I would love every physician to have, just as like a pocket class. So I think that that's the most immediately useful, probably. I loved my ethics class. That's just like my jam. I think any neurodivergent person is a little bit more pro justice and is a little obsessed with ethics. So that honestly was one of my just favorite classes.
Thanks. Sarah, Alice?
One that's come up a lot for me is the research in law, business, and technology class. I think while I was in it, I didn't realize how much I would end up using it. But now if there's ever a question that comes up in the clinical space about whether something is allowed, or it's not like I'm giving the legal advice, but I know where to look and I know how to get this ball rolling before we need to then consult somebody else. And then things that I didn't think I would enjoy, the more business towards business formation and structures, those were some of my absolute favorite classes and favorite professors to learn from.
That's awesome. Sarah, anything to add there?
Yeah, I really like contract law because it's very formulaic. And I think it is just very useful to have. Another favorite class of mine, surprisingly, was the effective professional communication. I can't remember what it was called when I took it, but I thought it was just extremely useful I think we all have a voice. Sometimes it's scary to know how to use it. And I thought that class was really helpful as to how you can use your voice to make like changes. So I really, really liked it.
Awesome. So I want to take you through the rest of the curriculum. So we laid out those 8 required classes. In a moment, I'll show you the full range of classes we offer. But one thing we did today is we kind of highlighted what we see as some of our health-related electives. So again, students really pick and choose the classes that are most relevant to them. But these are ones that we think are maybe either specifically tailored towards students in health professions or health fields, or classes that we think are maybe the most relevant. So you'll see we have added a number of classes specifically in health law and health regulation. We've added a class on sort of data applications in health. We have a class on medical devices and regulation, and we've added a class this year for all MSLs on issues in health and human rights as well, thinking about some of the policy issues there. On top of that, we have skills classes that were mentioned today, negotiations, public persuasion, project management that are really relevant, I think, in this space, business classes. And then we find a lot of students in this area really focused on regulation, unsurprisingly. So a lot of classes here, Leslie mentioned earlier, privacy and data are huge areas of relevance, for the medical industry right now. I'm going to go back to our panelists one more time. Outside of the required classes, any favorite classes in the program that you want to shout out here, or classes that have been the most useful to you? Sarah,
I think health and human rights was a fantastic course. That when I took it, that class was with us, the MBA students, and I think maybe the law students were also in that class, the JD students. So mine was project based and it was on the focus of climate health. And I think that really got me interested in climate health, which I think is going to impact all of us as future physicians or current physicians. And so that one I would really, really recommend. And also the food policy class was just interesting and I would just recommend it. I think it was a fun and the professor was fantastic.
Thanks, Kelly.
I really like the public persuasion skills and strategies. The professor is super fun. And I'm going to be giving a TED Talk, so I can use that for that endeavor.
Awesome.
So I'm looking forward to taking the negotiation skills and strategies class because I think in healthcare, most of us have no background in that. And let's be honest, statistics show that we do not negotiate like we should just in general. So I think that would be a lovely little ad.
Thanks. Alice, what about you?
Yeah, I'll talk about health and human rights as well because it was very project based. So it's totally different based on your topic. I worked with a team of MBA, MPH, and Masters of Public Policy students, and we focused on women's rights in detention center settings abroad. And so I've taken what I learned in that class and now actually volunteer with an asylum clinic at our school, helping to create curriculum for how physicians who are testifying on behalf of clients can best, draft their affidavits and ask the correct questions and coordinate appropriately with the attorneys.
Fantastic. We actually have a number of classes similar to the health and human rights in that they're sort of cross interdisciplinary or project-based and team-based. Another one I want to point out that's been really popular with students sort of interested in medicine is the entrepreneurship lab, which is an opportunity for students to sort of develop a product, identify a problem, usually in medical devices and the medical space, and then work on developing that product and going through that process. I'm just going to run through a couple more slides that kind of give you the full gamut of classes that we offer. So I'll show you our residential offerings, our online course offerings, and then those compressed classes that we mentioned earlier, which are either in the Power Week or the weekend classes. And we, again, have sort of broken them down here in terms of business, IP, regulatory, and skills classes. So these are the residential courses that we're offered, and we'll set out these slides afterwards as well so you can look through these. Here are all the online courses that we offer. Again, there's a lot of flexibility in our electives for students to take classes in the alternate format. So if you're a residential student, you can still take online classes. Online students can still take residential format courses, but we've also tried to create counterparts for any classes offered in one format or the other. So most of the time, if you see something offered in the residential program, we also offer it online, or we offer something similar to it online. And then here are those Power Week and compressed classes. So again, we have the Power Weeks where we offer several classes in the span of a week that you can come take. We also have weekend classes that usually take place like on a Friday night and Saturday morning. Just last weekend, we had this legal operations class in fall 2. And this upcoming weekend, we have an entrepreneurship law class that's taking place on the weekend as well. So a lot of options here. Again, and these are kind of a fun way to try something new in a short time frame. Leslie, any questions related to the curriculum that I should?
That's a good question. And one that I answered in the chat, but maybe you can expand on, sort of has to do with this kind of like residential online mix. So how do online students fulfill their required classes, and how do residential students fulfill theirs?
Yeah, great question. So all of your required classes, those 8 classes we showed earlier, these have to be taken in your specific format. So if you're an online student, you'll take all of these required classes online. If you're a residential student, you'll take them residentially. And this is really done on purpose to help you develop your cohort of peers. So residential students, you take most of these in your first fall 1 term, and then a few scattered throughout the rest of the year. Online students, you'll start taking these classes before you dive into your electives at all. So depending on your pace, you'll get through these either within your first year or first 2 years of the program. Once you finish those required classes, the electives, you have a lot more flexibility, and you can take those either residentially or online.
I mentioned to somebody in the chat, Ashley Hargrave is our admissions director, and this is Ashley's email address here. So if you have any questions, you want any follow-up information, please feel free to get in touch with Ashley. I know she'd be happy to answer questions from you. We really are grateful that you took the time to join us. I know you have lots of options out there, and this is a kind of a unique one. We kind of feel like the students like find their way to us. It's a little magic. And then people come and they're so happy that they came and they learn so much in the program, and they go on to do really amazing things. And so we kind of just let it happen. And so far, it's been really good. And you can see that from our students and alums. We've had a significant interest recently from the American Medical Women's Association. So we've partnered a little bit with AMWA on a couple activities, and we intend to do more of that in the future. We do interact with students who tend to be people who are active, who are involved in different organizations. I think Kelly is an active member of AMWA. And so we invite those of you who heard about the program through AMWA to stay in touch with us to get more information. And we want to thank AMWA for supporting the MSL program and giving us the opportunity to get in front of their membership and talk about this degree.